Absolutely. So Rebecca, just so you know, and I just put it there, I'm going to put it here in the comments. If for some reason there's someone that can't log in, I will be happy to send the full slide decks after the meeting and then get on a call with them at a time that's convenient.
All right, Chris, you are set up as a presenter. I believe if you just go ahead and would like to share your screen, I believe everybody will be able to see it. And everybody can hear you now.
Good.
Rebecca, it looks like we've got about 6 attendees in right now. I've recently received several signups, but most of them don't appear to have logged in. And recently, in the last 5 minutes, there's been, looks like, 7 or 8 signups. And they should have received an email with the link, and I've also put the link directly in there in the chat. If you need to, you can send that link to anybody and they can log in. All right, Chris, it's all yours.
And everyone can see my screen?
I can, and everybody should be able to.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. I'm Chris May. I'm our information security consultant with Advantage Technology. Deal with everything from small companies all the way through large corporations. Just a little background on me. I began in the U.S. Navy through the United States Naval Nuclear School years ago. I won't say how many. I don't want to date myself. And we had a huge focus on security around ICS systems, right? Industrial control systems, information control systems, as they actually called them back then. Now they're referred to as industrial control systems, and distributive control systems, which some of you might be familiar with in manufacturing. Later, through different roles, I ended up with DuPont Chemical, actually in Bell, West Virginia, which is now Chemours. And also there we had a massive focus on security around ICS, DCS systems. And then that led me to my role here at Advantage Technology, where I consult with many of our clients on how to understand security frameworks, how it fits into their business, and how they can keep themselves safe. I'm going to start off with just simple cybersecurity, right? The fact that you as an individual are the last line of defense now. Go through some of the basics. Some people know the basics, some don't. Move through that. It's a good refresher if you do know the basics. And then Jack Schaefer, who's also on the call and will introduce himself a little bit later, is going to step into more specific security around manufacturing and the specific threats to manufacturing. So we'll just jump right in. First of all, I already introduced myself. Like I said, I'm our information security consultant. This is what I was used to seeing years ago when I went through the Navy. So pretty serious security around reactors and ships and the things that control these things. So a question I get a lot is, what will the warrior guardian of the future look like, right? Basically, people ask me, what is the new defense going to look like? A lot of people think it's this guy. It's more like this guy back here. The biggest threats we have now from nation-state actors are not them crashing our borders like what happened in D-Day, but actually to crash through our systems to control critical infrastructure, refineries, big manufacturing operations. As people know, a lot of these things can be turned into a giant bomb if they're put in the wrong hands or not operated correctly. Some of the big chemical plants and refineries of the world especially are very, very critical to the way we operate safely. So a lot of your protections now are done through a computer. Some of the recent headlines that we'll go through basically point back to what I want to talk about today, is the fact that the human factor is a big deal in security. It's a really big deal. We hear over and over employees at fault in major breaches, human error to blame for breaches. The biggest threats are the people inside your company. Once again, employee error, lack of competent staff, undertrained employees. Company employees blamed for cyber attacks, right? So you see this over and over. It's the people, the staff that are being blamed. That's a big deal, right? And it makes people a little nervous. It makes people scared. They're trying to figure out what's going on. So let's try to figure out why that's the case and then what we can do about it, right? So the first question is, what is the risk? Then we get into why are there hackers? right? And are you at risk? So here's the big thing that you have to understand about security. 93% of all money is digital, and that's what's at risk, right? It's a financial crime. It is not a crime because somebody doesn't like you or doesn't like your business or these other things that you hear about. It's purely financial motives, right? They're out there trying to make money. So let's look at that, right? Let's look at how that happens, right? What is a cybercrime? Some of the basic threats we have today, crime as a service, which is a big deal that we'll dig into a little deeper if you don't understand what that is, and then tips to protect yourself and your business. So basically, what is cybercrime, right? It's a criminal activity that involves the internet, a computer system, or computer technology. So 50% of online adults, about half of them were cybercrime victims in the last year. Most of them don't even know it. Those numbers actually just went up recently due to the major breaches that we've seen with Yahoo saying they lost 3 billion records. So a lot of those records were things that affect basically all of online traffic. $500 billion. So that's what it costs the global economy annually currently. Now that number's going up astronomically every day. Nobody has a good handle on exactly what it is right now. And 20% of businesses, so 1 in 5 small medium businesses have been targeted. These are serious statistics, and these are what we're facing right now with cybercrime. So the question is, what is it, right? What is black hat cybercrime? So you may have heard this term before. It's popped up in the media a lot lately, but black hat cybercrime is a form of malicious behavior, right? Just as we said, it's motivated by profit and a predictable ROI. And the reason I stress this over and over is these are the reasons that you have to be very, very aware, right? Is once people find out you can make a profit and you have a predictable ROI, we prove this in business every day, you're going to continue to do those things that make you money. That's why we're in the new normal now. Cybercrime is not going to go away. This is the world in which we live. So once we know that that's the new normal, what are the threats we're facing? These are not all of the threats that we face currently or that you face in business or even personally currently, but these are the ones that I think are important for us to talk about. These are things that you need to be very aware of in our current environment. So first of all, just simple e-crime, right? There's botnets out there that infect, networks and devices with malicious software. They're controlled centrally. They're deployed by an individual somewhere, right? And then there are some types of malware that live in the systems that you don't even know are there that are really hard to detect by users, right? That take software and other things to detect. And we'll get into more of how that works later. That's just e-crime in general. Phishing, a little more specific, can come through email, phone, SMS, fax, voicemail. You can even have phishing scams through the U.S. mail, right? Somebody's just throwing a line out there hoping you bite the hook and you'll give them valuable information. Whether that information is passwords, whether it's financial information, something of the such. Typically now we see it by email. It's one of the biggest threat vectors that we have to deal with now because everyone uses email. It can be done through spam or V-phishing or SMS phishing. So we have seen phishing campaigns through text messages, right through SMS now, or the same thing. They're wanting you to reveal some critical information that will help them to make money. And credential harvesting, right? So that's what I talked about, passwords. You're going to receive an email. It looks completely legitimate. You click a link that looks legitimate that's not, and it asks you to enter your Microsoft password, for example. You enter your username and password. Now they have your credentials. You've probably used that username and password in other places. That's a big one. Ransomware is huge right now. With the advent of Bitcoin, it enables people to take payments without them being traced. Once again, financial gain is the reason they do this. Now they can't trace the payment that's made. That's why we've seen it grow astronomically in the advent of ransomware. What it does is it holds your files for ransom. You log in your computer, everything says it's locked, it's encrypted, you can't get in unless you pay. You can't get into anything. And you have to pay to regain access, and people will pay to do that in order to be able to operate the business. And then physical security. We do see, a big problem we see now is people can walk right into a business. You'll see a desk with the administrative assistant or the receptionist there. USB ports are facing the front, so I can plug in a USB right to the back. That'll worm right into your network. Has a little program on it, do everything they need to do. You never even know it happened. And they didn't even have to come at you through your email or through your security. So these are some things that you really have to think of about serious threats that are facing business nowadays. Let's move a little forward. So out of those we talked about, ransomware is the fastest growing threat that we see. right? We see it constantly, honestly. I just saw it with a firm about a month ago that supports the manufacturing industry. They do packaging, specialty packaging, and not a lot of employees. I think 8 employees, and only a few people use computers, but all the computers in the business were locked out, completely encrypted, couldn't get into anything, had to pay a ransom to get it back, which is not easy for a small business, and the ransoms get more astronomical as the companies get larger, which is equally as hard. So what do? Train employees, filter emails, scan emails, configure firewalls, patch, good AV, right? These are the basics that I've listed here. Jack's going to get more in detail on this stuff of how you actually do that, but if you want to know the things that you must do, train, email security, configure firewalls, patch your systems, and update antivirus. Those are the things you have to do, right? Those are foundational. Then you step up a little more, manage the use of privileged accounts. We want to start doing network segregation and some other things. Like I said, Jack's going to get more into detail of these. Control access to your networks, disable macros, implement software restrictions, right? These are all things that you want your IT department to really be looking at and thinking about. Also, you really want somebody that's specialized in security. Nowadays, IT and information security have become separate entities. You want a third-party oversight of what's happening with your IT to make sure it's absolutely safe. Right, then you want to take that next step and start to do stuff like disabling remote desktop protocol. That's how people get into your network from outside. Maybe look at virtual environments. And then go to the next step, which is that physical and logical separation. Like I said, Jack's going to get into more of that later. I just want to touch on the fact that there are ways to prevent this. That's the key takeaway from this slide, is yes, it's prevalent. Yes, it's growing like crazy, and it will continue to, but we can stop it. And then here's my favorite quote of all time. Bad news isn't wine. It doesn't improve with age. And I say that to say one of the biggest things you can do is when you see a problem, tell somebody. We see a lot of times somebody will click on something they didn't mean to. They'll see something that looks a little suspicious. They're afraid to tell IT. They're afraid to tell whoever runs operations, right? They're afraid to say anything. It's only going to get worse. Step up, say something happened. I promise you the people that control your networks will love you if you stop a ransomware attack at one computer so it doesn't spread through the whole company. And this is the feeling you usually have, right? When you see something like that, you want to hide from it, you want to get away. This picture's on here because we actually had a lady at one point at the state of West Virginia who was hiding under her desk because she got an email that said her best friend was trying to kill her and they wanted money to release the tape to her. It sounds crazy. I throw it in because it's kind of funny, but that actually happened, right? She was terrified. And the reason why is the email had a lot of personal information. It was very detailed. It was very crafted. It was a very targeted spear phishing attack. So these people are out there, and they have crazy ways to get at you. And what we try to do with these presentations and these talks is to make you aware of what's going on so you can protect yourself. You might have good resources in-house to help you with this in your particular business or your entity that you just need to reach out to and make sure these things are going on. And this is a quote that somebody shared with me some time ago, that if you spend more on coffee than on IT security, you will be hacked. I don't think I agree with the last sentence. What's more, you deserve to be hacked. Nobody deserves it, but the point of the quote is this is how serious that the cyber czar felt about it when he was in the White House, is that yes, it's a crime, and yes, we hate it, but it's your responsibility to step up and to do something about it to make sure it doesn't continue. So here's the biggest problem we see as well, cybercrime as a service. You see on the left and the right here, these are tools that you can go buy off the internet. So now you don't have to be some amazing nation state hacker to deploy malware. What's happened is people that have written these different malwares, viruses as we know them, things like that, have realized, wait, I can put it on the internet and sell it to people, and I don't have to then deploy it against a company and hope I get paid. I'll sell it to other people, get paid immediately, and let those people deploy it. And so now you have 8 billion people with access to crime as a service kits, which is what you see here. They can go buy them, they can send them out to some email list they've bought somewhere else to, 10 million different emails, and then just see what hits and see whose accounts they lock out. This is why we see a massive uptick in it right now. So I will tell you that hiding in a box like this gentleman or lady is not going to keep you safe. And that's what we see a lot of people do, sadly, is they think, oh, if I don't talk about it, if I don't think about it, if I don't, then I won't have to allot any money to it, and I think we'll be okay. Nobody wants our stuff. We're not important. That's not the point. They're not coming after you specifically. It's thrown out. It's all this is painted with a very broad brush, right? They throw it out to as many people as they can and see what sticks. They didn't have to be coming specifically after you, but they'll be more than happy to cash in your Bitcoins, I promise. So what can you do? First of all, we talked about firewalls. Keep them on. You have to have them in your business, and you need to have them at home. And on malware software, it's got to be up to date. We talked about patches earlier, right? Keep software up to date. And if it's possible to do it automatically, you should, right? And you have to be vigilant. I tell you all the things I've told you up to now, not to use scare tactics, but to let you know that the threat is very, very real. These are things that myself and Jack see every day working with companies in regard to security. And it's the worst calls we get are when somebody's had an incident and has ransomware or has a virus. And it's not fun for us because they're in a crisis at that moment, right? Their business is at risk. Their employees are at risk. We would much rather help walk them through it in the beginning than have to hear them in that state, because nobody wants to hear somebody that is absolutely devastated about what's happening to their company. So be very vigilant and know what's going on right now. And we're going to take questions at the end. Jack's going to dig into more some of this stuff about defenses, specifically for manufacturing. So I'll go through it a little quick, and if there's things we need to come back to at the end, feel free to ask questions. Here's a big one for me. Don't be tricked into downloading malware. Most of what we see now, a user has shoehorned it into the network. So they'll open a bad email. It'll take them to a bad site. It'll look very real, just like these two sites do. They start clicking links, typing in credentials, and it's it. You have to really look at what these emails are. Nobody's going to send you a subpoena in an email. It's not how it works anymore. If they do, they obviously have no idea how things are supposed to work. Also, too, if your antivirus is on and your computer warns you of things you can't get to, or the office network tells you there's things you shouldn't get to, don't go around that. A lot of people now have went to websites and figured out how to get around certain things and use proxies and all these other things. It's a horrible idea. You're just going to open your network up to something terrible. Here's a big one. Protect personal data and financial assets. So once again, how do you avoid these scams? You have to be vigilant, right? Look for signs. Think before you click on things. And like I said, these all point back to what you can do as a person, not specific corporate security. Expect that you'll be the target of a scam. There are so many now that you are currently a target and will continue to be a target, and you have to constantly know that when you're online. Once again, I said this is the new normal. This is where we live from here on out. And keep your sensitive information private, right? You should definitely not be on public networks logging into your bank account. It's a really bad idea. So now we're going to jump into this passwords. This is a big one for me when it comes to personal security, right? Your password is your personal security. It's your personal piece of security that helps protect your information, corporate assets, all these other things, right? You would not believe how true this meme is, right? Somebody figured out my password, now I have to rename my dog. This is the problem that we have right now in our internet society, is that we make passwords something so easy that we can always remember. That makes it very easy for the people that try to get your passwords to get in and to figure out what they are. So let's look at a couple passwords. Let's see if you can figure out which ones are strong. I think everybody would agree that that's terrible, and it is. So how about this? Some of you are probably thinking, well, that looks okay, right? It's numbers, a couple characters. It's terrible. Random number generator can guess that in a matter of seconds. What do we think of this guy? Looks okay. It's not. It's a simple word with an exclamation point. The reason I say it's not is because now we have basic dictionary programs that will run through every dictionary known to man, change every letter and character as they run through these dictionaries until they find a combination that matches. I think you all understand how fast a computer can think, so you imagine how fast it can go through these dictionaries. It will figure that out. Absolutely no questions asked, and they get better every day. And there's online repositories of dictionaries that are digital dictionaries that already have all the characters and numbers changed to make it even faster. It's not a good password. Now this looks a little crazy, but it's good. And I'll tell you why it's good, because it's 4 words that have no association with each other whatsoever, right? There's nothing about that would make you think to put those 4 words together, and then you've changed some characters and numbers and things in them. Solid, very solid password. There's not a dictionary program that's going to guess that out of the blue. I've had some people before look at this and say, oh, that looks strong. It's a bunch of different numbers. It's not. It's weak. A random number generator can figure that out, and it won't take it very much time at all. This looks a little strange. Probably thinking that looks secure. It absolutely is. It's as secure as you can get. So what it is it's an acrostic basically, right? You've taken a sentence that you can remember. So we still try to make it. This is the way you make it easy to remember without being easy to crack. We've taken a sentence. My son Aiden was 3 years old in December. Take the first letters of every word in that sentence, smash that together into a password, change some letters and numbers, throw some special characters. Completely solid. I do this. This is the way I generate master passwords that protect my password managers that encrypt and store very detailed passwords that are generated by the computer. Remember this. Use a sentence that you can remember all the first letters, change the numbers and special characters. I promise you it will help you. The last thing you need is somebody to get a password that you reuse over and over and over for Facebook and Twitter, and then use it to log into your bank account. Or even worse, to log into the corporate network, and then you're on the hook for the things that happen to sensitive information and the money that's spent to recover. So passwords, protect your accounts with them, make them strong, keep them private, don't send them through email, use unique passwords for different websites. I tell this to everybody, never, ever, ever, ever reuse a password. Use a password manager, something like Dashlane, that you can store them in and will automatically generate you strong passwords, and you need one as a master password for that. I can get into that in more detail. I can send out some information from it. If later you guys have questions, you want to put them in the comments or send us an email, we can help to answer how some of this stuff works in more detail off the call. And limit use of employees using corporate email accounts on third-party websites. So you should never use a password that you use in your company for Facebook, for your bank, for Twitter, any of that. You have to have something completely separate. You need to definitely separate personal life from your corporate and business. And then the other thing, defend against checkers. So this is things that need to be done in the networks to disable too many account logins. Don't use certain interfaces, and to monitor for brute force attacks. Like I said, Jack will get into more of the corporate security, and we can answer questions about this later. The other thing about security that I always talk about are backups. So if the house burns down, do you have a way to recover? Backups are critical nowadays, and like I said, that's something we can get into. For the sake of time, we won't dig deep into them. Jack might get into a little more, but you have to have solid backups with all the threats out there nowadays in case somebody steals all your information. If you have good backups, you won't have to pay. And then here's the big one with cell phones, right? I jump right into this because this is, people don't think about it, but we have security issues with cell phones, right? There are malware programs out there now, and as you start to work and do stuff on your personal phone from work, work emails and things like that, you open yourself up to a lot of issues of doing that with cell phones. We see a lot of people now that we consult and let them know that you need a personal cell phone and you need a cell phone for work. It's expensive for companies, but it's the nature of what we do, and we're starting to have to move in that direction. So talking about cell phones and devices, same thing. Guard your data and devices when you're on public Wi-Fi. You want to connect securely. You want to confirm the connection. You look at this, it's on my screen, and it looks like it says HiltonHotels.net, but it doesn't. It's missing an I. Somebody spoofed that email or spoofed that website, so you'll log into that thinking you logged into HiltonHotels.net, and then everything you do on there, it's going to track you. And it'll look just the same when you log in. If you don't see it in the address, you'll never, ever know. So you got to be very vigilant of this stuff. And I talk about this too because a lot of us do work now on public Wi-Fi as we travel, as we're in airports, these other things. Public Wi-Fi is not secure. You got to use, virtual private networks and some tools to keep you safe out there, and really watch for the websites you jump onto. Encrypt storage on mobile devices. Once again, we jump back to mobile devices, especially laptops, right? That's a mobile device. They need to be encrypted. They leave the office, they go out in the wild, as we say, and once they're out in the wild, you never know where it's going to end up. Have to be encrypted. Phones now, we see a lot of law firms that are being required by their clients to absolutely encrypt phones as well. I mean, like I said, this is the new normal. Save sensitive activities for trusted connections. My suggestion would not to be to hop on your corporate server while you're on public Wi-Fi in an airport lounge. It's a really bad idea. If you have a good solid corporate VPN that you can trust, that's one thing. But try to save that activity for a connection that you trust. And then flash drives. Never pick one up. Never ever pick up a flash drive. People actually leave them in parking lots of corporations, companies, hoping that somebody will pick it up, plug it in to one of the computers, and then they're in. Just don't. It's not a good idea. There's nothing on there you need to see, I can promise you. And then we'll get into more of this later around, workforce, cloud storage, but there's some really specific things you can do to help manage work features and workflow to keep you a whole lot safer than just keeping everything on a local device. So once again, what can you do to help, right? If there are problems, like we said, it's not like fine wine. It doesn't get better with age. Immediately report incidents, report abuse and other problems that you see, right? If you're getting nasty emails that are threats, if you think it's somebody you really need to report these things. Immediately report phishing. That's something that is very prevalent nowadays, but it's something that you really need to talk about. When you see these phishing attempts come through, report them to your IT department. Report them to the company that handles your IT security. Once again, backup device data. A big thing for us now, if you get ransomware and you have proper backups, you can recover from that without paying the ransom in most cases. Backups are now not just for business continuity, but a critical part of your cybersecurity plan for your business. Then immediately report any missing devices or theft of company data. If anything, if you lose a phone, if you lose a laptop, even if it's your personal phone, but you do company business on it, if you lose it, report it to your company. Let them know. Change your passwords. Find out how you can wipe the phone remotely, right? These are things that you personally can do to affect your security. We'll get into the Q&A a little bit later. Jack Schaefer is going to jump on, get into more detailed stuff about manufacturing. Hope that was helpful for you guys. Joe, if you want to take it away and hand it over to Jack.
All right, thank you very much, Chris. Let's see here, Jack. I'm going to make you a presenter now. Unmuted you, Jack, there, and I'm going to make you a presenter. You should be able to share your screen now, Jack.
Great. All right, great. Okay, great. Can you guys see my slide here?
Yep. Loading. I see loading coming up. There's your slide. All right, Jack, take it away, buddy.
Great. Hi, thanks a lot for joining us. I'm Jack Schaefer. I'm the Business Transformation Director for Advantage Technology. I'm also like a virtual CIO, virtual CISO, which is a Chief Information Security Officer. So I've been in and around oil and gas business for many years. Been in IT for almost 30 years, and so I've seen a lot of changes and have a lot of experience in cybersecurity. So 2017, it was bad, kind of a bad year. There was a lot of ransomware out there. We had WannaCry, NotPetya. These were all sort of systems that were infecting older machines. Verizon had a big security lapse. There was like 14 million customer data stolen. Uber had 57 million customer data exposed. Equifax had 145 million. Americans had their data exposed through a data breach, and Yahoo, that breach actually is probably the largest one to date. There's like 3 billion people that were actually impacted in that breach. So pretty terrible statistics, just from a cybersecurity perspective. And like Chris says, it's not really getting any better. So, manufacturing is under attack today. There's a Kaspersky Lab report that came out in October that said over 30%, well, actually a third of the attacks in 2017 were actually dedicated toward compromising manufacturing. So what are they after? I mean, why is manufacturing under attack? Well, a lot of it is intellectual property. So I mean, they're trying to grab some of this stuff off of your machines, off of your industrial control systems. And if you're using 3D printing is particularly dangerous, I'll say, or not dangerous, but at risk for compromisation, because that's where all your designs are. You put all your CAD designs on, all your CNC machines, those sorts of things. They have everything there, and so if those machines can be compromised, they can pull all those designs over. Hackers are also, they're trying to disrupt or sabotage. So we have an example here in Germany where a steel mill actually had a device that was compromised, and it caused the furnace to overheat and melt down. So it was just a compromisation of the PC, and it actually caused a physical problem inside the plant. Now, fortunately, nobody was injured, but it still shows you what can be done out there. So what really makes the manufacturing industry vulnerable to these kind of attacks? Well, number one, what we see is there's a lack of awareness and training. So we're happy you guys are on this presentation by Chris and myself, because that shows you are getting aware. And but in general, most of the organizations don't really have formal security training programs in house. And so as Chris said, you're the last line of defense, really. And so having awareness and training programs are really beneficial. There's a lot of remote work that's out there. You have folks that are connecting in using remote desktop tools, so they can do their accounting systems from home or from wherever, or get into their industrial control systems from other places, or allow vendors to come in and take remote control over some of their systems. And so that makes it really convenient, but it also exposes your network to attack, because the same remote systems that you use, hackers can compromise those and use them as well. There's a lot of older IT products out there. A lot of these systems are in place a long time, 20 years or more, in some of these factory settings, and these systems have been identified with known vulnerabilities because they've been out there so long. So you see a lot of those that are in use. There's not really a good cybersecurity culture inside of manufacturing. You don't really think about some of the embedded systems as being even computers. They just think of them, well, it's a design system. I don't really have a worry about it being compromised. But a lot of these have embedded operating systems that can be compromised in a hack. So again, we see a lot of these data networks out here where your plant manufacturing systems are on the same network as your office PCs, and that's kind of bad, because a flat network like that makes it really easy for hackers to come in and infect a PC and then move laterally through your network into your industrial control systems. There's a lot of folks that are using systems and putting things in play. They don't really know what assets they have out there, and there's not good asset inventories, and it's almost impossible to protect a system if you don't really know what you have. There's a lot of software weaknesses, a lot of cybersecurity problems in a lot of these older systems. They're still in play. You may have Windows XP, Windows 2000, 2003 still in use in some of these systems. So there's some problems associated with that. We also see these aging control systems. Again, they're out there. They really they've been in place for a long time, and so those weaknesses are out there and they're publicized. what do you do, right? I mean, we're under attack. We've got all these kind of vulnerabilities and things that make us vulnerable for attack. So what do we really do? Well, first off, there's a lot of industry standards out here, frameworks as far as quality and manufacturing. ISO 9000. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that, but these are quality management standards that are in use for a lot of manufacturing. You say, well, these are best practices that we use to manufacture, especially if you're in things that are going to be involved in human consumption and that sort of thing. You're wanting standards for quality and cleanliness and that sort of thing. And so these are frameworks that are used in that. ISO 14001, that's a framework that provides for environmental, so it's kind of specific around environmental controls. So basically these are industry standard frameworks around some of the manufacturing processes. Well, there's also cybersecurity frameworks. Okay, so these are frameworks that help you do best practices and standards around security. So ISO also has a security framework. It's called ISO 27000, and it's a family of these frameworks that kind of help you walk through and figure out, what is a good process to put in place around end-to-end security. The CIS, which is the Center for Internet Security, is for critical security controls, and these are links here. You can go out and go pull this information down. It's very, very useful. The critical security controls tells you what kind of controls you need to put around your devices, around your PCs, around your servers, around your industrial control systems. So very, very, excuse me, very good information there. NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, they have a framework for improving critical infrastructure. So they went through this, and a lot of manufacturing is in that critical infrastructure. And so they, in December, they put out a cybersecurity framework that is made for folks who are running this critical infrastructure to review and put into play some of the best practices here. If you're in the financial sort of industry, there's the PCI, which is a payment card industry. They have a standard out there for how, if you're taking credit cards or you're processing financial data, there are a series of controls around the appropriate security of that data as well. So this is basically on your right is that CIS framework, which I like a lot. It's pretty simple. It really it's basically saying, look, we want to protect the system. We want to detect any kind of problem that gets in. Then we want to be able to respond to that problem. Then we want to recover, and then we kind of identify, the attacker and the threat that hit. And so it's basically this framework around all of the security of your devices. So one thing I'll tell you is that security is not really just a firewall. It's not just a product. I mean, it really is an entire set of process. So you have policies and procedures that says this is how we're going to do things internally, and make sure your employees are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, and handling customer data or your own intellectual property with care. You really should have an annual risk assessment. So it's like have an IT company come in and do a risk assessment on where you are. Are there any gaps? Are there things you could be doing better? Again, security awareness training, those are things that train your employees on, how to be suspicious, how to not fall for some of these scams. Access control, these are things that, you basically have, you don't use shared passwords, you don't have everybody with admin rights and that kind of thing. You really want to define the access. Really, on a lot of these industrial control systems, security event monitoring is really kind of key. What are you really doing, as far as monitoring your internal networks? You might monitor your premises with cameras and burglar alarms and that sort of thing, but very few folks are actually watching their network. Change and configuration management, those are things that, it's always important anytime you make a change in your environment that you want to make sure you analyze what it does to your risk. And so again, it's just a process that keeps going and going. It doesn't really stop. So what's some action items here? So action items here, you really should work with your IT department. Anytime you're doing a project, putting in new equipment, putting in new, upgrading equipment, that kind of thing. You should really work with your IT department. A lot of devices anymore, when you buy them, they actually have internet connectivity built in. You buy a TV, guess what? They all have internet connectivity. That's the whole Internet of Things. There's a lot of security cameras and other systems. They basically come right out of the box with internet connectivity. If you just use default passwords or the things that are set up on them right out of the box and don't change it, then they can easily be compromised. So again, train your personnel on cybersecurity awareness. It's really important. Just like Chris said, it's your last line of defense. So you really should conduct a true security risk assessment. Get somebody to come in, do an assessment for you, say, okay, this is where your gaps are, here's where your potential risks are, and have some action items that come out of that to really say, okay, this is what we would recommend you to do going forward. I'm a big proponent for event management and monitoring on your network. A lot of these hacks and breaches were long-lived attacks. I mean, they didn't know that somebody was on their system for like 6 months or more. And the reason that was because there was no event monitoring. So just like you would have a burglar alarm or a fire alarm or something to monitor your physical premise, you really should have something that does something similar in your network. And again, an asset inventory with technical details. That way you know where it is, what version of the operating system, what version of the software. That way, if there's a threat or some kind of vulnerability that comes out, you'll know. So it's like, oh, there's a vulnerability on that particular piece of software, vulnerability on that particular piece of hardware, so you know where it is so that you can take appropriate action. So all your vendors and third-party providers, I would suggest try to push them to use these same security frameworks. So some of the recent hacks, like for Home Depot and Target, actually came in through third-party vendors who were managing and monitoring their HVAC systems. And so again, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And so if you have third-party vendors that are doing things for you, you probably want to encourage them to say, okay, what is your cybersecurity posture? What is your ability to control access to your network so that when you're accessing and doing things on my network, you don't bring a compromise into our network. I would encourage you to kind of put into play some of these frameworks, pick one or two, and start doing some best practice around cybersecurity. These frameworks really is a process, and as you go, it gets better and better. Now, if you don't have an IT department, you really should start working with a trusted firm that's really knowledgeable in cybersecurity. And it is a specialized field. It is pretty complicated. Not just every IT company that just does PCs and firewalls and that kind of thing looks at it from a holistic viewpoint. So I kind of encourage you to, if you don't have your own IT department, reach out to somebody that you trust that has skill sets in cybersecurity. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and unmute all participants here. If you've got any questions, you can go ahead and ask them as soon as you get unmuted. Okay. Okay, so attendees should be able to, if you can unmute yourself, there's the little microphone icon there. Or if you have any questions you would like to type in the conversation area, you should be able to. Feel free to go ahead and do that now. All right, Jack, I don't think we have any questions. Chris?
Joe, it's Chris.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll just say for anybody on here, if there were some things you didn't understand or you don't want to ask about right now, and also if you know anybody that wasn't able to log on, let me know. I'll be happy to set up a call to go through it in detail one-on-one just to talk about it, share the slide decks with you guys. But just to answer any questions you may have about, what this looks like inside operation and how this would work. And there's no question that that's too crazy or too simple, right? I'm going to put my email address in here, just so you guys on the comments, so you know how to reach out, and also a phone number. This is the easiest way to reach me as well. Sometimes it's nice to have somebody to reach out to when things go bad, and so that's the best contact information right there. And the one thing I will say is the first step doesn't cost you any money. All right, the first step is to be vigilant, to look at it, to start the conversation, see where you are, right? And that's something that we can assist with. There's other people that can assist with. If you have an internal IT department, go to them and just ask those questions, right? It's free to start the conversation, and a lot of times that's what opens your eyes to see that you have gaping holes that are going to let people walk right in and cause you some serious problems.
All right, Chris, that was great, Jack. I think that was great presentation. Rebecca, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Is there anything that you would like to say to everyone before we close out? Any last words from anyone? All right, great, guys. Well, we'll touch base again here real